Here are 5 eerie and scary stories for you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for new videos and updates. Let's start the creepiness. Journal of Father Anthony. Entry 1, August 1st. I have arrived at St. Michael's Church, a small, quaint parish on the outskirts of town. The church is old, with weathered stone walls and stained glass windows that tell stories of saints and angels. The air inside is cool and musty, filled with the scent of aged wood and incense. The congregation is small but welcoming. They seem grateful to have a new priest, and I am eager to serve them. This will be my first official assignment since ordination. I feel both excited and anxious. Entry 2, August 3rd. Today, I had my first unsettling experience. While sitting in the confessional, I heard someone enter the other side. A voice, soft and trembling, began to confess. The man spoke of horrendous sins, murder, cruelty, blasphemy. His voice was filled with remorse and desperation. I listened intently, my heart heavy with the weight of his words. When I opened the screen to absolve him, there was no one there. I felt a chill run down my spine. Perhaps it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Entry 3, August 5th. The confessional incident repeated today. This time, it was a woman's voice, sobbing as she recounted her sins. She spoke of poisoning her children and burning her husband alive. Her voice was filled with a mix of sorrow and madness. My heart pounded as I listened, trying to remain composed. When I opened the screen, once again there was no one there. I felt a deep sense of dread. Is it possible that these are restless spirits seeking absolution? I must be imagining things. Entry 4, August 7th. I am starting to notice figures during Mass. Out of the corner of my eye, I see nuns and priests I do not recognize. They stand among the congregation, their faces pale and eyes hollow. When I turn to look directly at them, they vanish. This happens several times today, and each time, it leaves me rattled. The congregation seems unaware of these apparitions. Am I losing my mind? I must stay strong and continue my duties. Entry 5, August 9th. Another confession today, a man claiming to be a priest himself. He spoke of horrific deeds done in the name of the church. He described torturing people, invoking dark rites. His voice was calm and methodical, sending shivers down my spine. I felt a cold sweat on my brow as he spoke. When I opened the screen, the confessional was empty. I am praying more than ever, seeking guidance and protection from these disturbing occurrences. Entry 6, August 11th. During Mass, I saw a nun standing at the back of the church. She was dressed in an old-fashioned habit, her face hidden by her veil. She did not move or respond when I addressed the congregation. Her presence felt ominous, as if she was watching me intently. When I looked again, she was gone. I asked the sisters about her, but none knew who she might be. My nerves are fraying, and I fear I'm becoming paranoid. Entry 7, August 13th. Another ghostly confession. This time, a young girl, her voice barely a whisper. She spoke of seducing men and leading them to their deaths. Her tone was sweet and innocent, contrasting sharply with her words. I felt sickened and terrified. When I checked, the confessional was empty. The fear is starting to affect my daily life. I am losing sleep, haunted by nightmares of these spectral confessions. Entry 8, August 15th. The haunting during Mass is becoming unbearable. Today, I saw a man in the front pew, staring at me with lifeless eyes. His skin was gray, and his clothes were tattered. He did not blink or move. When I blinked, he disappeared. I nearly stumbled over my words, and the congregation noticed my distress. I am starting to doubt my ability to serve here. These apparitions are driving me to the brink of insanity. Entry 9, August 17th. Another disturbing confession. A man, speaking with a cold, detached tone, confessed to being a serial killer. He described his murders in vivid detail, the joy he took in each one. His voice was devoid of emotion, which made his words even more chilling. I felt paralyzed with fear. When I opened the screen, as always, the confessional was empty. I am starting to dread entering the church. The weight of these confessions is becoming too much to bear. Entry 10, August 19th. The apparitions during Mass are growing more frequent. Today, I saw a group of nuns standing by the altar. They were singing a hymn, their voices soft and haunting. When I looked directly at them, they vanished. I nearly dropped the chalice in my hands. The congregation is beginning to notice my distraction. I am afraid to speak of this to anyone who would believe me. I feel so alone in this ordeal. Entry 11, August 21st. Another ghostly confession. This time, a woman claiming to be a nun. She spoke of betraying the church, leading her fellow sisters into heresy. Her voice was filled with pride and malice. I felt a deep sense of dread listening to her. As always, the confessional was empty when I opened the screen. I am starting to understand the pattern. These are not mere spirits, they are malevolent entities seeking to torment me. My prayers feel hollow, and my faith is wavering. Entry 12, August 23rd. The apparitions are becoming more aggressive. Today, during Mass, I saw a priest standing by the altar. He was smiling at me, his teeth sharp and his eyes filled with malice. When I blinked, he vanished. I nearly collapsed in fear. Journal of Mother Superior. Week 1, Sister Margaret's arrival, August 1st. Sister Margaret arrived at our convent today, coming from Sacred Heart Convent. Her arrival was met with a mix of curiosity and apprehension among the sisters. She is a young woman, probably in her early 30s, with an air of distress that is hard to ignore. She has a habit of glancing nervously around, as if anticipating some unseen threat. I have been informed by her previous superiors that she has experienced supernatural disturbances, leading to her transfer here. Despite my efforts to assure her that St. Anne's is a haven of peace, her visible discomfort suggests otherwise. There is an undercurrent of unease that cannot be easily dispelled. I will observe her closely in the coming days. Week 2, Sleepwalking Incidents, August 8th. This week, it has come to my attention that Sister Margaret has been sleepwalking. Reports from various sisters indicate that she has been found wandering the convent's halls during the night. One particular incident involved her standing in the dimly lit chapel, her eyes fixed on the altar as she murmured something unintelligible. The sight was both unsettling and disquieting. I instructed the sisters to keep a watchful eye on her during the night to ensure her safety. It seems her past experiences have not left her, but rather have followed her here, manifesting in these eerie episodes. Week 3, Apparitions and Disturbances. August 15th. The disturbances have escalated noticeably. Sisters have reported seeing shadowy figures lingering near Sister Margaret's quarters. Last night, Sister Helen described hearing soft whispers emanating from the vicinity of Sister Margaret's room. Gentle, sorrowful voices that seemed to be lamenting. During Mass, Sister Margaret appeared distracted and disturbed, often glancing over her shoulder as though something was moving behind her. The sisters have noticed a pervasive sense of dread, which seems to be linked to Sister Margaret. It is becoming increasingly clear that her presence is stirring something malevolent within our convent. Week 4, Increasing Paranoia, August 22nd. Sister Margaret's behavior has become more erratic and alarming. She now exhibits signs of severe paranoia, frequently looking over her shoulder and flinching at the slightest sound. Her sleepwalking incidents have grown more intense and frequent, with her now venturing into areas of the convent that are both unused and filled with an unsettling history. The atmosphere in the convent has shifted. The once peaceful environment now feels charged with an uneasy energy. There are reports of flickering lights and doors opening by themselves, which only intensify the sense of dread. It is evident that whatever is troubling Sister Margaret is also affecting the very fabric of our convent. Week 5, Eerie Manifestations, August 29th. The disturbances are becoming increasingly bizarre and frightening. There have been numerous reports of ghostly manifestations around Sister Margaret's quarters. Objects have been found moved from their original places, books scattered, religious artifacts displaced. Sister Margaret's sleepwalking has led her to the convent's abandoned wing, an area known for its eerie atmosphere and dark history. During her nocturnal wanderings, she has been found talking to empty air, her voice filled with fear and desperation. The entire convent feels as if it is shrouded in an oppressive fog. I am growing increasingly concerned for the well-being of all the sisters. Week 6, Disturbing Confessions. September 5th. Sister Margaret has begun to make alarming confessions during her lucid moments. She describes horrifying dreams of being pursued by faceless entities that seem to sap her strength and will. Her nighttime episodes have become more disturbing, characterized by episodes of severe agitation and fear. Several sisters have witnessed objects in the convent moving of their own accord, which seems to correlate with Sister Margaret's presence. The overall atmosphere has become more menacing, with a sense of malevolence that is palpable. I am deeply troubled by these developments and worry about the impact on the other sisters. Week 7, Possession and Exorcism. September 12th. Today, the situation reached a critical point. Sister Margaret was found in a state of possession. Her behavior was completely unrecognizable. Her voice was guttural and foreign, her eyes vacant and dark. This terrifying transformation confirmed our worst fears. The demonic presence that has tormented her since childhood is now fully manifesting. I have begun preparations for an exorcism, drawing upon my experience to confront this malevolent force. It is clear that the demons following Sister Margaret have used her vulnerabilities to gain entry into our convent, seeking to spread their terror. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated, and I am determined to act swiftly to protect Sister Margaret and the convent. Final reflection. The series of events over the past 7 weeks has been profoundly distressing. The presence tormenting Sister Margaret is not merely a residual haunting, but an active, malevolent force seeking to sow fear and chaos. The signs were subtle at first, unexplained disturbances, eerie apparitions, but they have grown increasingly aggressive. The possession of Sister Margaret. The mall was bustling with life as the group of teens roamed from store to store, laughing and joking. It was a typical Friday night, and the shopping center was packed with people looking for weekend deals. Among the group were 2 best friends, Jake and Sam, who were the targets of a prank their friends had been planning for weeks. The plan was simple: leave Jake and Sam locked in the mall overnight, and then reveal the joke in the morning. Jake and Sam, thinking it would be a harmless adventure, went along with it. As the mall announced its closing time, the friends executed their plan flawlessly. They snuck out, leaving Jake and Sam behind in a secluded corner of the food court. It wasn't until the last announcement rang out and the lights started to dim that Jake and Sam realized they were alone. They laughed, knowing their friends were likely watching from the security cameras they had hacked earlier. At 10 o'clock, the once vibrant mall became eerily quiet. The last of the employees hurried out, the clatter of their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Jake and Sam watched as the final security guard made his rounds, the beam of his flashlight sweeping across darkened storefronts. They decided to hide in a supply closet, waiting for the guard to pass before beginning their exploration. By 11 o'clock, the silence was oppressive. They decided to explore, hoping to find an unlocked exit. The mall, now devoid of life, seemed larger and more menacing. They wandered aimlessly, the sound of their footsteps unnaturally loud. Somewhere in the distance, they heard an eerie sound, like someone crying. Jake shrugged it off, but Sam felt a chill run down his spine. They pressed on, trying to ignore the unsettling noise that seemed to follow them. By midnight, their nerves were on edge. The crying sound persisted, sometimes growing louder, sometimes fading into the background. Sam wanted to find a place to hide until morning, but Jake insisted they keep moving. They passed empty stores and dark corridors, each one seeming more sinister than the last. The silence was occasionally broken by strange noises, a distant thump, a faint whisper, the rustle of something unseen. At 1 o'clock, the mall clock chimed unexpectedly. Both boys froze, staring at each other in confusion. The clock should have only chimed at midnight, yet here it was, sounding loudly at an ungodly hour. The chime reverberated through the empty halls, sending shivers down their spines. Jake tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked, betraying his fear. 2 o'clock marked the beginning of true terror. As they turned a corner, they saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hall. It was a woman, her long hair covering her face, dressed in a flowing white gown. She stood still, her head slightly tilted as if listening. Jake and Sam backed away slowly, but when they turned around, she was there again, closer this time. They ran, hearts pounding. But no matter where they went, she seemed to follow, always appearing just out of the corner of their eyes. By 3 o'clock, the mall clock chimed once more, but this time, it was different. The sound was deeper, more resonant, as if it were coming from the depths of the building. Jake and Sam huddled together, realizing that something was very wrong. The chimes seemed to signal the start of something sinister. They remembered stories they had heard about the witching hour, the time when supernatural entities were most active. The next hour was a blur of terror. They were chased by more than just the lady in white. Shadowy figures flitted through the corridors, whispers filled the air, and cold hands seemed to brush against them. Every attempt to find a hiding spot was thwarted by the relentless entities. They ran until their legs gave out, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. By 4 o'clock, they were utterly exhausted. The entities seemed to toy with them, appearing and disappearing at will. Jake and Sam found themselves in the mall's basement, surrounded by old, forgotten displays and storage boxes. The basement was colder, and the air was thick with a musty smell. As they tried to catch their breath, they heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. They held their breath, praying not to be found, but the footsteps stopped just outside their hiding place. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their own racing hearts. At 5 o'clock, the basement lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The footsteps resumed, and this time, they saw a pair of glowing eyes staring at them from the darkness. The eyes were malevolent, filled with an ancient rage. They tried to run, but their bodies felt heavy, their movements sluggish. The eyes followed them, always watching, always waiting. As 6 o'clock approached, the entities seemed to grow bolder. The lady in white appeared once more, her face twisted in a grotesque smile. Shadowy hands reached out from the darkness, grabbing at their clothes, their skin. Jake and Sam screamed, but no sound seemed to come out. They felt themselves being pulled into the shadows, the cold fingers tightening their grip. Just as the clock struck 6, the terror reached its peak. Both boys fainted, their minds unable to cope with the horrors they had witnessed. When they woke up, it was to the sound of bustling activity. The mall was opening for a new day, and employees were starting to arrive. They found Jake and Sam huddled together, pale and trembling in the basement. The boys were too shaken to explain what had happened. They stumbled out of the mall, vowing never to return. Their friends who had planned the prank were horrified by the state they were in, and never spoke of it again. As the days passed, Jake and Sam tried to forget their ordeal, but the memories lingered. David had always found a certain peace in visiting his grandparents' graves. The cemetery, with its old gnarled trees and moss-covered headstones, held a nostalgic charm for him. On the first day, he arrived just before dusk, carrying a small bouquet of flowers. He spent some time tidying up the graves and reminiscing about the past, lost in his thoughts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David realized he had lost track of time. The cemetery's gates were already closed, and the caretaker was nowhere to be found. He began to walk towards the exit, hoping to find another way out, but the winding path seemed unfamiliar in the growing darkness. Panic set in as he wandered deeper into the maze of tombstones and crypts. The first night, he encountered an old man wearing a weathered hat and carrying a lantern. David's relief was palpable as he approached the figure, asking for directions to the exit. The old man spoke in a raspy voice, pointing towards a narrow path. David followed the direction given, but when he turned back to thank the caretaker, the old man had vanished. Confused and uneasy, David continued walking, only to find himself back where he started. It was then that he noticed the eerie silence, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Throughout the night, David heard whispers and felt cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. Shapes flitted in his peripheral vision, but every time he turned to look, there was nothing there. Exhausted and scared, he finally huddled behind a large monument, trying to sleep. The next morning, the cemetery looked different in the daylight, but the sense of dread lingered. David decided to explore, hoping to find a way out. He stumbled upon a small, overgrown section of the cemetery that he hadn't noticed before. There, he saw a young woman in a tattered dress, sitting by a grave and weeping. He approached her cautiously, asking if she needed help. The woman looked up, her eyes hollow and vacant. She told him a sorrowful tale of betrayal and murder, pleading for justice. As she spoke, David felt a chill run down his spine. Her story was too vivid, too real. When he looked away for a moment and turned back, she had disappeared, leaving only the echo of her sobs. David's attempts to find an exit were thwarted by the cemetery's labyrinthine layout. Every path seemed to lead him back to the same spot. As the second night approached, the air grew colder, and the whispers became more insistent. He tried to ignore them, but they seemed to come from all directions, accusing and condemning him for reasons he couldn't comprehend. That night, David was plagued by visions of ghostly figures emerging from the fog. They hovered around him, their faces contorted in anger and despair. Some reached out with skeletal hands, while others merely stared with empty eyes. Terrified, he ran blindly through the cemetery, stumbling over gravestones and roots. The apparitions seemed to follow him, their forms flickering in and out of existence. By the third day, David was exhausted and disoriented. His clothes were torn, and his body ached from the constant fear and lack of sleep. He wandered aimlessly, haunted by the ghosts of the cemetery. He tried calling out for help, but his voice seemed swallowed by the oppressive silence. As the day wore on, he noticed strange symbols etched into some of the headstones, and a creeping sense of familiarity began to settle over him. That night, as darkness fell, David saw eyes glowing in the shadows. They followed him wherever he went, always just out of reach. He could hear footsteps behind him, but when he turned around, there was nothing there. The glowing eyes grew closer, and he could feel their malevolent presence. Desperate, he ran through the cemetery, his heart pounding in his chest. The final revelation came when David stumbled upon a freshly dug grave. The headstone bore his own name, and the realization hit him like a thunderclap. He was dead, buried in the very cemetery he had been wandering for the past 3 days. The ghosts that had haunted him were not seeking justice or retribution. They were simply fellow lost souls, trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment. As the truth settled in, the glowing eyes surrounded him. David felt a strange sense of peace amidst the terror. He was no longer running, no longer searching. He was part of the cemetery now, another restless spirit among the many. The ghosts that had tormented him receded into the darkness, leaving him alone in the eerie silence. In the days that followed, the cemetery's gates opened again, and life resumed its normal rhythm. Visitors came and went, oblivious to the spectral presence of David and the other ghosts. The old man with the lantern, the weeping woman, and the many other spirits continued their hauntings, seeking solace in the company of the living. David's story became just another whisper among the graves. The school at night. I never thought I'd be scared of my own school, but there I was, trapped inside with darkness enveloping every corner and shadows that seemed to move on their own. It all started after school hours, when I was supposed to leave for home, but somehow I got locked in. The day had been like any other. I had stayed after school for a math tutoring session, which was a huge mistake in hindsight. My tutor, Mr. Thompson, had to leave early, and I was supposed to catch the bus right after. But that's when things went wrong. I misplaced my bus pass and, panicking, ran back to the library to find it. As I searched the empty room, I didn't notice the time slipping away. When I finally emerged from the library, the hallways were eerily silent. The last of the after-school activities were over, and the school was deserted. I tried the doors, but they were all locked. I checked my phone, but it had died. The only light was the dim, flickering fluorescence of the emergency lights. I was alone. I remember the chill that ran down my spine. The school, usually bustling with students and teachers, felt cold and unwelcoming now. I decided to look for another exit, hoping to find a door that wasn't locked. As I wandered through the empty hallways, the silence grew oppressive. My footsteps echoed strangely, and the quiet made every little sound seem enormous. I ventured into the gymnasium, hoping there might be a janitor's closet or some tool I could use to break a window. The gym was vast and shadowy, the basketball hoops casting long, ghostly silhouettes on the floor. As I walked through the center, I thought I heard a faint, echoing thump. It could have been a basketball rolling across the floor, but there were no balls or people here. I shook it off as my imagination playing tricks on me. I checked the large doors leading to the outside, but found them locked tight. In frustration, I slumped down on the bleachers, trying to think of what to do next. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper. It was so soft I almost thought I imagined it, but then it came again, a chilling murmur that seemed to drift through the air. I looked around but saw no one. I was truly alone. Determined to find a way out, I decided to explore the old part of the school, a section that was rarely used. The hallway was lined with old lockers and had a musty smell. As I walked down the corridor, I noticed something strange. One of the lockers was slightly ajar, and the sound of something clinking inside reached my ears. I approached it cautiously, my heart racing. But when I opened the locker, it was empty except for a few old textbooks and a broken pencil. That's when the temperature dropped noticeably. My breath became visible, and I could see my own shivering reflection in the windows. The flickering lights overhead seemed to dim even more, and the once still shadows now danced along the walls. I could hear the whispers again, this time louder and more insistent. They seemed to come from every direction, overlapping and blending into an unintelligible cacophony. I hurried to the office area, thinking there might be a phone I could use to call for help. The office was dark, with only the emergency lights casting a weak glow. As I fumbled through the desk drawers searching for a phone, I heard a door slam shut somewhere in the building. The sound reverberated through the empty halls, making me jump. My search yielded no phone, but I did find an old flashlight. With the flashlight in hand, I decided to investigate the source of the noises. I made my way to the basement, hoping to find a maintenance worker or some other means of escape. The basement was even colder, and the faint light from my flashlight revealed walls covered in peeling paint and rusting pipes. As I descended the stairs, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The basement was cluttered with old furniture and boxes, and the silence was almost suffocating. I began to hear the whispers again, louder this time, almost as if someone or something was following me. I swung the flashlight around, but saw nothing but the eerie glow of the shadows cast by the clutter. I reached the old storage room, which was filled with dusty relics of the past. Among the clutter, I saw a figure standing in the corner. At first I thought it was a person, but as I approached, the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness. I froze in terror. My flashlight flickered and then went out, plunging me into complete darkness. Panic set in. I tried to turn the flashlight back on, but it was dead. The whispers grew louder, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. I could hear footsteps behind me, faint but unmistakable. My breathing was rapid and shallow as I turned and fled, stumbling over old boxes and debris. I ran back to the stairs, my mind racing with fear. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, and they seemed to be calling my name. The temperature continued to drop, and I could see my breath forming small clouds in front of me. I reached the stairs and climbed them as quickly as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. By the time I reached the main floor, I was out of breath and on the verge of tears. The whispers had faded, but the sense of being watched remained. I noticed a dim light coming from the gymnasium and decided to head back there, hoping someone might have come back or that I might find another way out. To my shock, the gymnasium was now lit up, the lights blazing brightly. I cautiously entered, expecting to find someone there. Instead, the gym was empty, except for a single figure standing at the far end. It was a man in old-fashioned clothing, with a pale face and hollow eyes. He stood silently staring at me. His presence was terrifying, and I felt a deep chill run through me. As I backed away, the figure began to approach slowly, his footsteps echoing in the now eerily silent gym. I turned and ran, not daring to look back. I burst out of the gym and into the hallways, desperately searching for any sign of help or an exit. Just as I was about to give up hope, I saw the janitor's closet door slightly ajar. I dashed inside and hid among the cleaning supplies, my heart racing and my body trembling with fear. I could hear footsteps approaching, but they seemed to be moving away from me. I stayed hidden until I heard the faintest hint of morning light filtering through the windows. It was the first sign of dawn. When the janitor arrived to open up the school, I emerged from the closet shaking and disoriented. I explained everything to him, and he listened with a concerned expression. He called for help, and soon the police and my parents arrived. The experience was horrifying and left me deeply shaken. The school, once a place of safety and routine, had turned into a nightmare. I never wanted to go back there again, and I still can't shake the feeling that the ghosts I encountered were warning me of something dark and sinister that lurked within those walls. To this day, I am haunted by the whispers and the cold, shadowy figure that chased me through the empty halls. I learned that the school, like many old places, held its own dark secrets, and sometimes those secrets come to life when we least expect them. Did you like the stories? Don't forget to lock your doors and windows tonight. It is scary out there. Don't let the dark night bite. For more eerie and scary stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for future updates.